Hey, before we get into today's episode, if you're a podcast host or guest, listen up. I've produced over 200 podcast episodes and guested on 50 podcasts just in 2025 alone. And let me tell you, nothing grows your audience or builds trust faster than being in front of the right listeners. That's why I created my podcast tour offer. I'll help you map out your topics, strategize your message, and find you the most aligned podcasts and audiences to get you and your business in front of. So if you've ever thought, I just wish more eyes were on my work, this is your sign. Let's get you on a podcast tour. You can find all the details in the show notes. Just look for podcast tour. Now let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back. I have a special guest today, Mckayla. She's an SEO strategist, blog content writer. She's your go-to when you need things done with SEO, blogging, even I'll go as far as saying repurposing podcasts, all the things, showing up organically online. So we actually met when we both spoke on a panel at a virtual summit. And since we've done a blog swap and now we're here making this podcast episode, I'm super excited to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Start with just telling us how you became an entrepreneur. Everybody's story is so different. I can't skip this question.
It's funny that you said, I normally don't get asked about it. They skip over it. They're like, maybe yours isn't that interesting. But I swear it is interesting. I actually started because I needed childcare money. That childcare was just too expensive when I was pregnant with my first back in like 2019, 2018. But I was like, childcare is too expensive. I need something to keep me going. I had been writing on Upwork for like pennies per word, maybe like pennies per 1,000 words. It was like ridiculous. It would not pay anything, but I was like, let me see where this goes. And then we came to the end of the pregnancy and I was talking to my husband and he's like, what would you need to take this further? And I was like, well, I think I need a website. Like if I'm not going to work with people on Upwork, I think I need a website and like some kind of like brand name. And I didn't want to use my name. I didn't think my name was cool enough. Like I love some people's names and I'm like, oh, that looks really cool. Like your brand is your name. And I was like, Mckayla Spencer. I just feel like there's not a ring to it in the same way. We went back and forth. He said, why don't you do the Comma Mama Co? And I was like, wow, that's great. Also, he does not remember helping me with the name. He's like, oh my gosh, did that? And I'm like, yeah, my entire business is named thanks to you, but you have he has no idea anything that I do at this point. We paid, I think like $500 for a website. It was my savings. I had been working like 4 jobs at this point. To put everything together. And I think I was still going to school because one of my memories is walking up a hill to get to class and not calling my mom to pick me up. And I was like 7 months pregnant. It's like, this is miserable. It was 90 something degrees. It was awful. But we built the website. It kind of just grew from there. I was blogging. I did Pinterest at that point. So I was SEO blogging and Pinterest. It's like, I can't do Pinterest anymore. I'm just going to lean into this SEO thing. I was already doing the blogging and I was like, let me just expand this route. And it's just kind of grown to what it is today, honestly.
That's awesome. So you've really been all over when it comes to SEO. You've been in like every platform and space you can do.
Pretty much, which is funny because I mean, Pinterest does work on SEO. So it was just a different flavor.
Right. So with that, SEO is everywhere. Why do you think it's become such a topic? Because I think back when you're starting, a lot of people didn't even know about it. I know I didn't know about it until the last couple of years where it was like, oh no, I should really give some time and thought to this. It seems to be talked about a lot right now. Why do you think that is?
Well, back when we first started, SEO was still kind of traditional. I came in like right at when COVID-19 was coming in. So there was a huge boom in the online space. Like it was just, everybody was going online, spending more time online, consumers, business owners, people were starting businesses, people were working at home. And there was this huge increase in just users and people who experience the online space. And so it's no surprise that it started to evolve. I mean, 10 years ago, Google was a completely different thing. You could keyword stuff, you could do whatever you wanted, and you could probably rank because there just wasn't competition and it wasn't necessary. They didn't need to weed out poor content. It just wasn't what it is. It's not, It wasn't as dense. And that was like the primary place. But now, I mean, we had Bing and Yahoo and stuff, but now it's literally everywhere. Most platforms have incorporated some type of SEO into how their platform behave and how users behave on the platform. TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest. Then we got Google. Then we have, AI. Like everything has some type of user behavior or search-based integration into how people are interacting on their platforms or apps. So it's spread, and it had to spread for people to get what they needed out of the platforms and spend more time on these platforms, because that's what they want. They want people to use them. They want people to stay on Instagram and get what they need from Instagram. They want people to stay on, podcasting platforms and binge episodes. They want you to use their stuff. Right. So they had to do it.
Right. So for most of us, would you say that most people typically think about their website when they start to think about SEO and optimizing that? And maybe where are some common mistakes in there when people just start out on trying to optimize SEO?
I would say like most people do think of their website. I would say the biggest misconception I get is like SEO is too big for a small website. Like, well, I'm just starting, I don't need to worry about it. When that's not really the case. It's more of, do you know what you do? Do you know who you're doing it for? Is your website pretty user-friendly? Or do you think you need like a total website revamp in the next 2 months? Those are the kind of things you need to think about before SEO. People do think website. That's pretty much the foundation is website. To be fair, website is the foundation, and you should think of your website first. But it's so much more than that. It's how your brand exists in the online space, how the pins you're creating, the podcast you're on, the way that you show up on Instagram, your Google business profile. Do you have Bing set up? Like, it's literally everywhere. It's backlinks, it's content, it's Substack, like how you exist and how your brand is perceived. And then how does it all come together? If SEO is a spider web, your website is that core piece in the middle.
Right. Okay. That's easy to think about like that. You love a good Halloween ghosty analogy.
I was like, this one's perfect for me.
Yes, exactly. When business owners start to try and optimize, fix, make their SEO better, what mistakes are you seeing?
A lot of it is keyword usage, like thinking we know right off the top of our head what our people are searching, or like what we actually have a chance for ranking. Because if I go out and I try and optimize my website right now for like SEO Strategist, I ain't gonna rank. Like, that's obviously what people are probably searching. So I've got one of those things out, but there are so many agencies and tools that I just don't have the chance of ranking. Like, I just don't have the website with enough brand reputation with Google to outrank it. One thing I see is we think about what we would search as experts and not what our people are searching. And this happens all the time. Like for SEO even, people don't always start with knowing what SEO is. They start with, well, how do I get my website on Google? And so that's more of a content piece versus a website piece, but I have to start there. I have to start thinking about it. And then, for example, podcast guesting expert, is that really what people are searching for?
No.
Like, we have to think about like where they're starting and their level of awareness. And that changes based on how they're interacting with us. And we just have to think about that customer journey. And so all of us can be on Google. We just have to figure out the logistics of finding the right search terms. So that's the biggest mistake I see, is like just not having the correct search terms. So you can check off every SEO box. You can optimize your site, you can do all the things, you can create the content, but if the keywords do not line up with what people are searching, you will not show up.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I have racked my brain about that. So how do we how do we know what they're searching? Because nobody is looking up a podcast guesting coach or strategist. I wasn't either. A lot of times we end up naming ourselves after we're in it and we're like, oh, this is what ended up happening. This is what I'm helping people with. You're absolutely right. That's not what people are thinking. So do you have any advice for someone that feels like they can't figure out what someone is going to go and search for?
Well, I would start with the basics. Look at market research. Look at your competitors. If there is a competitor who has been around for a while, even if they don't do exactly what you do, but maybe it's like a sub-service, test their website. See what keywords they're using in their copy and in their meta description and their SEO titles. So just look at the headers on their websites. What are they calling the service? Because if you found them on Google, so if you went to Google and just looked up podcast guesting expert and you notice like they're not saying it in quite the same way, then you can kind of take those tips. You can also use keyword tools. A really good one that offers free searches is Mangles. So you have 5 free searches on Mangles each day, not like forever, but each day. Mm-hmm. And you can play around with how you phrase things. So you could say like podcast guesting expert or podcast manager, even podcast editor, SEO strategist, and see, okay, this just has too high of a difficulty and I can't rank for it. Or this doesn't have any volume. There's nobody searching for it. So that's not a good match. But then it'll also show you like recommended keywords. It'll show you like, okay, well, here's some similar searches, or here's some things that you might be looking for, and you can click through those as well. So it's a lot of exploration, and you can use Google. Like I said, you could literally just go and Google it and see what language others are using. The only thing I would say is if you decide to go like AI for some help, test everything before you use them. AI can be good for ideation, but a lot of the keywords it will provide you with are not actually what people are searching the same way that you would come up with, and it's not necessarily what people are searching, or it's just such a common sense keyword that you can't rank for it.
Makes sense. Okay, so if we go into specifically podcast guesting is building your SEO. Tell me, like, why is that? What's happening for those that maybe they're not in the podcasting space or they're just getting into it and they're like, how is that helping?
So I am a huge fan of podcast guesting, and that's why I've done it for years. And it's the same as guest posting, doing a guest blog on somebody's website. With the rise of AI, and this has been a thing for regular SEO and traditional search engines as well, backlinks are important. Backlinks are when someone builds a link or drops a link on their website or platform back to your site. Now, this is where the website becomes important because it needs to go back to your site. You need that. They call it link juice. I hate the name of it, but they call it link juice.
The song from, I think we're close to the same age, the song Pimp Juice. When you said that, that's all I could think of in my head. I know I won't sing it for the people listening. We'll spare you that. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
But yeah, I'm going to think that every time I talk about this. But it does. It builds link juice and it builds reputation. I like to compare it to when your friend gives you a recommendation for their favorite restaurant. They're like, I just tried this. You need to go try it. You're going to love it. You're so much more likely to go and try that restaurant, right? Like, you already know that it's been pre-vetted, your friend loves it, and she's saying that you are going to love it too. And she knows your preferences. So you're going to go visit that restaurant. The same thing happens when you build backlinks. Google and even AI are like, okay, if this person who has some trust or is known as an expert in this niche is recommending, essentially, has that backlink, is recommending this person, we're going to want to suggest them more. Like, we're going to want to recommend them too. We're going to want to test them out and say like, okay, let me see what's going on over here, which is great, especially when your website's in good health. And that's where we come back to that website being a foundation. Because if your website is in good health, you've got the right keywords. And even if you don't have like a huge presence on Google, that doesn't matter just yet. But if your website is set up to become a presence on Google, every backlink is building that SEO. Every backlink is building that reputation. It's building that trust with search engines and AI. So the more backlinks that you have from reputable, aligned places, like podcast guesting, the more your SEO can build.
Yeah, perfect. That's like when I tell people, when you guest, you get to borrow the host's trust. It's like the same thing you were saying. It's the host telling their audience that they've already built that know, like, and trust with, that you can trust this person because I wouldn't bring you a guest on that I don't trust and that I haven't vetted. And so that's really cool to know that the same thing is happening virtually in the background. Yeah. I always just skip over like the nitty gritty and say, well, it's working for you in the background. Like, instead of having to show up online or on social media 24/7, these things, when you do a podcast guesting, you end up having this stuff working for you in the background. But this is such a good explanation for those that really like to know the why and like really what's happening. Because yeah, in the show notes, our links are all in there. Like, if you go to these show notes, Mckayla's links are going to be in there. I'm going to put all of that in, and that's what hosts do. And that's the backlink she's talking about. So that's awesome.
Well, it's kind of beyond the podcast. Like, that's where it kind of comes into that branding, because there are a bunch of ways to borrow. So we can borrow yours. Mm-hmm. So we're literally borrowing like your as a podcast host, but we're also borrowing the podcast platform. So wherever this gets published, Apple Podcast, if it's hosted on Buzzsprout or Captivate, wherever your feed is, that we get a backlink from there. If you publish it as a blog post, if you create a Instagram post and you tag me, that's more brand trust. That's more for me, for Google, and for AI. So every single time, and I'm sure you think about this when you recommend like finding a good podcast to guest on, is to like look for activity from the host that they actually share their show, I'm sure. Yes. But that's what I say too, is like, if you want to build backlinks through podcast guesting, look for shows that are active, look for ones that are sharing across platforms, or bring it back to their website and turn it into a blog post or have their show notes on their website, because that just doubles it.
Yes, absolutely. Everything kind of goes hand in hand. And even though I'm like, oh, if you guest on podcasts, it can save you some time on social media. But the fact of the matter, like you said, the website, it all goes together. So maybe we aren't spending oodles of time on social media, but we still need to have it. We still want, like you said, those hosts that are going to share the episode versus it's just on a podcast platform. So we want all of it working together. It doesn't mean that we need tons of time spent in every space, but having a foundation set up. So that can lead me into that next piece. What else can we do to optimize that foundation? We said having a website set up. What else is going to be helpful?
A lot of it comes back to the website. The actual setup of the website is making sure that your website is user friendly. I'm making sure that, if I go to your website today, can I find your contact? Can I understand what you do? Do I know what your offers are? Something, because you have to remember that, where this episode might be 18 minutes, 20 minutes long. That's not a lot of time to get to know somebody. That is some time, but this is a first impression. So I want to make sure that if you come to my website, that you know what I do. You know who I am, who I help, and how I can essentially help you. So your website needs to do the same. It needs to tell people and Google who you are, what you do, if you can help them. But it goes a little bit beyond. So we want to make sure that our structure is good. The behind the scenes, what people don't see, making sure that we have one H1 tag, which is the text tagging of your page. Only one. We want to make sure we have a meta description and a page title, SEO page title. So that's not necessarily your H1. That's something behind the scenes. What you see, if you go Google me, you'll see it says the Come On Mckayla, and then there's a little description. That top thing is my SEO title. The bottom thing is my meta description. So you want to make sure that those have what people would need and what search engines need to know what I do and who I do it for. So it's about cohesiveness and experience, really.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's funny that you're bringing up the H1 heading for each page, those things, because years ago when I had my first website built, I paid someone to do it. And then a couple years later, I was like, I just think I was going to start working on my SEO. So I hired someone to help me with that. And she's like, well, your website's really pretty. You don't have any H1 headings. You don't have any of this. Over the last 5 years, I've done some random jobs. And so that involved helping people with some websites and looking, and it's so easy to spot it now. And it happens, unfortunately, so often when you do hire someone that you want to make sure, I think, that they have SEO knowledge and expertise, not just making you a pretty website, because it's really not going to be working for you, as mine was not.
So one thing I like to do is on Threads, specifically just because it's an easy place to reach people, is I'll drop a thread and say, hey, by the way, I have some free time this month. Drop your website and I'll do a quick little video behind the scenes to tell you what's happening. Because a lot of SEO you don't see, you don't think of if you don't know it. It's one of those things, if you don't know, you don't know. I did 6 websites last month. Every single website had incorrectly tagged, but all of them were beautiful, and some of them were even web designer websites. But it's one of those things, you don't know. And so it's just one of those things. It does carry weight for your SEO, and that's actually a pretty significant one. That's a basic thing in your checklist. I like to say that SEO is not a checklist, but that is actually something you need to check off your list. But it happens all the time. That, and then all image descriptions. All image descriptions get neglected. They are least loved of sites, but they really do help for accessibility and for SEO.
It's definitely one of those things that you don't know it, which also brings a good point up, a good reminder that it is always well worth your dollar to hire someone. I mean, vet them a little bit. If you're going to have a website designed, awesome. Let's hope that they also have some SEO knowledge so that it's not just a pretty website or those types of things. But hiring someone that does have the knowledge will speed things up. And for me, that's how usually I ended up knowing what I know, because it's really easy and glaring once you do know it. But
yeah, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Which is making me think about photos on my website. I'm not sure that I have them all up to date. You're right. They are probably the neglected piece. How do we track this? What we track grows, what we focus on grows. How can we track this so that we can know if we need to make improvements or if it's working?
The very basic thing is going to be setting up your Google Search Console. Setting up your Google Search Console as soon as you do it, if you've never done it before. And it is pretty intuitive. You want to make sure you set it up as a domain property. So if you literally Google Search Console, it will prompt you to set up an account, set up your Search Console. You want to set up a domain property. And as soon as you do that, pretty much in the next 3 days, you're going to get a lot of notifications from Google. And some of them are things that you don't really need to care about because they're intentional. Google just likes to tell you about it. So that could be you have a redirect. Well, I put that redirect there, so that's okay. But some of it is like, hey, by the way, this is hitting a 404, and you're like, that's not supposed to happen. Or this one is doing this, and you're like, that's not supposed to happen either. So that's a really good place to start and just track, because it'll tell you, okay, are your pages actually showing up? Does Google know you exist? Are none of your pages getting indexed? So indexed is when, Google knows your page exists and decides to put it in search. Even if it's not ranking, it knows it exists and it's testing it. But if they're not getting indexed, they're not getting in Google. So you have to figure out, like, if that's happening, like, what do I need to do? But that's a really good place to start. And then also being webmaster, I will say it's not as intuitive, like the user experience is not as good as Google's, but it is a little bit more insightful for SEO. So that's another good place to start, is just setting up being webmaster. And if you do your Google Search Console first, you can connect the accounts and it just imports the information. I think the entire process might take you 15 minutes.
Okay. Interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I only ever have to do this every once in a while, but if Google isn't indexing your site, and you can request in your Google console, Search Console, to have it, like, to get it in the queue to speed it up a little.
You can take the URL and you'll have like a little search bar on the top, and you can literally just submit the page for indexing, but that does not guarantee that it will be indexed. So if you're repeatedly doing that and the pages are still not being indexed, then that's when you have to like start thinking like, oh, what do I need to do here? There's also a bunch of free tools that you can use. So there's like heading check, like just Google check H1s, and it'll allow you it'll give you a free HTML checker, and you can just put in your URL and it'll tell you, oh, this is an H1, and then this one is also an H1, and then this is your H2s. So it'll kind of give you a behind the scenes, so you're not like crawling through the back end of your website wondering like what you're looking at. It'll like just tell you. Okay. So that does save some time, which, I mean, just to say, but the checklist, I'll give you a link for it, but the checklist, it's called 6 Simple Steps to Better SEO, but it takes you through like adding meta descriptions. It does talk about building backlinks, and then it also talks about like checking your HTML for your H1s and just making sure that your structure is okay. So very basic things that you can kind of like help check your site.
Okay, perfect. I'll link that in the show notes. And is there anything else that we haven't covered? We might be to the point of overwhelming people. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on?
I don't think so, but I do want to just clarify that, like, if you have not thought about your SEO at all, or like if you thought about it and you're like, I'll just think about it later, because I mean, we have so many things. It is no longer an all or nothing. It used to be like, oh, I'm going to have to put so much money behind it, or I'm going to have to like put all this time behind it. It's not necessarily, because it is so everywhere now. It's so integrated into what we're doing. The main thing is just making sure that our foundation is good. So making sure that our website has good website health, and like we have the right keywords and the right placement. And that can look different for everybody, because, we're all at different stages of our business. But once you get into that period, just making sure that you're sending people to an optimized site. But that alone will start doubling what you're doing. That'll make your podcast guesting go further. That'll make your Instagram post go further. That'll make your Threads post go further. It'll make everything that you're doing already just go a little bit further, and then you can neglect it again for a little bit. So once that foundation is good, you can start neglecting it again and just doing what you're ready to do until you can take on doing more. Like, then you can start working on more intentional backlinks for like guest posting or joining directories or doing all the things like blogging. You could do that later. But if you get your foundation down now, what you're doing is plenty. What you're already doing is plenty.
That's a comforting thought, because it's like we have to do everything we said today. Yes. Not true. Just, yes, get that foundation, take it easy. We can only do so much. Well, thank you for this. This was great. I always know that mine can be improved, so I'm probably going to take some of your tips and go double check mine.
Little TLC.
Yeah, right? Where can we connect with you after this?
So I am usually on Threads. That is where I tend to hang out because of the ease. So just at comamama.co. I do have my own podcast. I have Everything SEO. If you do want to like listen to more how-tos or behind the scenes content, I do a lot of like educational and the whys behind it. It gets a little techie, but it is helpful.
Yes, I've listened to it is definitely helpful, definitely actionable. Awesome. I will link both of those in the show notes, as well as the freebie. Go get that so you can get your SEO checklist going. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Hey, before you go, if you've ever wished podcast guesting or hosting felt a little easier, you're going to love this. I started a free podcast matchmaking community where hosts and guests can actually connect, swap shows, and find aligned conversations without all the cold pitching and chaos. It's totally free, it's super fun, and it's growing every day. So whether you're looking to grow your audience, get in front of the right people, or just finally get your message out there, come join us. You can find the link in the show notes to join the community.